I'm pleased to be here with Brigitte Ramsey, who is the Executive Director of the Pritchard Committee. And in fact, she was on television last night, KET, with Renee Shaw on Kentucky Tonight, talking about public education. And so, first of all, Brigitte, thank you for being on our program. Thank you for being with the third National Microcredentials Summit. So, what is the Pritchard Committee?
So the Pritchard Committee is a 36-year-old citizen-led independent organization working to improve education in the state of Kentucky, early childhood through post-secondary. We do that in two ways. We study policy and research and make recommendations for improvement of the system, but we also engage citizens across the state to be champions for better education locally.
And you've added a youth component to it also.
Yes, student voice has been part of our work for the last 7 years. And as soon as they came on board, starting to do the same, research policy and influence decision making and be a part of championing local education, we realized they have been the missing piece for many years.
Yeah. And this national summit was held the last 2 years in Hazard. This year in Louisville, next year it's going to be in Iowa. So what do you think about Kentucky hosting this type of event, and how important is it to educators?
Well, first of all, it's exciting, but it's also just kind of typical, quintessential Kentucky, if you will, for Kentucky to lead in this space, to lead in the space of innovation and commitment, deep commitment to education and education in place. And that's what KVEC is doing so wonderfully, is really focusing on the richness of education in place in a particular geography with a focus on communities and schools rallying around the needs of our young people and our communities.
What is the value of micro-credentials and competency-based professional learning?
So the first time I heard about micro-credentials was at KVEC's summit a couple years ago, I guess maybe the first summit, the first or the second summit, and I was inspired by the teachers at the summit who spoke to the power of micro-credentialing on their craft. How important it was for them to have just-in-time information as they were struggling with a problem of practice, either individually or as a group. And the power of being able to work through a micro-credential that they were able to use and apply immediately, and then work through a micro-credential as a cohort, as a group, and apply together and learn through that process was powerful. And I realized that it was something that was really lending to their improvement and improvement of learning in the classroom. And so have been a fan of the micro-credentialing conversation ever since. And think we need to consider all different applications for micro-credentials, even for our students. Are micro-credentials something right, a proper innovation to help our students credential up for the skills that they need to be successful in the economy?
We know because of funding and other issues right now, a lot of people are concerned about the state of public education in Kentucky. So where would you put us in the state of public education in Kentucky right now?
Funding?
Yeah.
Let's say we should all be raising a flag and waving it with a lot of concern. We're not funding public education, early childhood through post-secondary at a level of adequacy, and that's eroding the requirement of the Rose case passed by the Supreme Court 30 years ago, the requirement that funding be equitable. And we know that when adequacy erodes, equitable funding is first impacted in areas like rural parts of our state, where there is much less property wealth and a lower tax base. And so we're really concerned about where we are right now from an adequacy and an equitable standpoint in funding.
And for our audience, I would invite you all to check the KET webpage to look at the June 17th program that Renee Shaw had on Kentucky Tonight that you were on. It gave a great history of Kara and the Rose case, and just as a great discussion, I learned a whole lot. Of course, in the program, they talk about when Governor Burt Combs decided to take that case. It gave it a lot of legitimacy and help with the success to win for more equity in education. What's interesting about Judge Combs, I and Sarah one time were trying to talk him into suing CBS because they did a bad broadcast about Eastern Kentucky. And he says, hey, I never will take a case I think I'm not going to win, you know, that you're going to lose. But in this case he was not optimistic about the whole Rose case.
But he knew there was a moral imperative.
He knew it had to be done, and so he took it. So that was really interesting when I think about when we were trying to get him to take another cause on, and this cause he thought it was so worthwhile.
Absolutely. And Kentuckians should be really proud of that case and our Supreme Court and then our legislature's response to that case. So Kentucky has led in innovation and equity for so many years, and I think we're positioned through the leadership of KVEC and others to really lead in that space again if we open our minds and are flexible in our thinking and really think deeply about what our young people need to compete in the future.
So right now, why should a young person or an older person who has got some other work experience, why should they want to become a school teacher in Kentucky?
That's a great question, Ron. And the first thing that comes to my mind is thinking about Kentucky's kind of arc of education improvement, which started a generation ago, more than 30 years ago. So the teachers in the classroom 30 years ago and to the present are the ones who have led our way from literally the bottom of the national rankings to the middle. Teachers coming into teaching now, those in teaching now, those coming into teaching, and those future teachers are going to be the ones that lead Kentucky from the middle to the top tier of all states. And that's an exciting thing to be part of.
I know the focus of what you're wanting to do is have greater attention and focus as well as funding for those early years when the brain is developed.
Yes.
So talk about the importance of that early childhood education.
So we know based on research that the brain is developing at its most rapid pace in the ages 0 to 5. And so that's a time for us to really have a great deal of impact, either positive or negative, on a young person. And so we believe strongly that we need to increase in early childhood programs, early childhood initiatives across the state so that families are equipped with the skills and the knowledge that they need to support their youngest learners well, and that we have high quality childcare, high quality preschool for children to attend when families are working, so that during these all important years of brain development, children are getting what they need and they arrive in kindergarten having already experienced success and the joy of learning, and they're ready to apply it day one to put them on a path to reading and math proficiency by 3rd grade.
Let's close out. This may not be a very fair question to ask, but it deals with way forward.
Okay.
Our 23 school superintendents engaged in a process because of the loss of enrollment, the loss of funding, knowing that we had to do something to change the economy in Eastern Kentucky. And so part of as they did the research and analysis, is that our schools can be greater economic drivers in the economy than they presently are. So I think you've read the Way Forward report.
I have.
So what are some of the things that you learned from that and maybe that the public should think about?
Well, the idea that KVEC has launched of a rural edu-economy is exciting and so important. Our schools are not going to get all the work that needs to be done for our young people completed in the hours of 8 to 3 in the afternoon. So our communities need to be part of the fabric of education as it relates to economic development, and our communities as the economic drivers need to be embracing what our schools need. And so there really is a symbiotic relationship between education and the economy, and KVEC recognizes that and is bringing folks to the table to understand that this is everybody's business, to kind of grab a phrase from our achievement gap work. Everybody needs to be at the table. This is about everybody's future. Our young people, our older people, our communities. The rural edu-economy is the way forward.
Okay. Hey, thank you so much
Ron,
for being
thank
on
you.
our program.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.